Anna Machin, thank you very much for your wonderful book, Why We Love, the new science behind our closest relationship. And thank you for accepting our invitation to have this conversation. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you for asking me.
My first question is this one. What is your answer to the question that gives your title of your wonderful book? So why do we love? I figure that can be an extremely short answer, right? It's like in social networks, the status, it's complicated.
It isn't it. Why we love at the most basic level isn't that complicated. We love because without love, we don't survive as a species, as individuals. So love evolved to make sure that we stick together and that we cooperate with the people that we need to cooperate in our lives to make sure we live long and healthy lives. So if you think of who you cooperate with a lot, you cooperate with people who are very close to you, maybe your partner, your romantic partner, your children, your parents, your family, and they're all underpinned by love. But you need to do that because otherwise you wouldn't be able to operate in the world. So why we love is all down to survival, and that's why it evolved. What love is a much harder question to answer.
Mm-hmm. So what is the new science behind our closest relationship composed of? The new science that tries to explain love?
Well, the new science is using really the latest techniques. First of all, to understand what's happening in our brain when we're in love. So what areas of the brain are involved? What chemicals are involved in love? I think everyone's probably heard of oxytocin. But actually, we now know there are 4 different chemicals involved in the sensation of love. So that's some of the new stuff. We also know more about areas of the brain that are activated when you're in love, both at the conscious level and at the unconscious level. And we also know much more now about the genetics of love. So we all vary in how we experience love, how we behave when we're in love. And one of the things that influences that are your genes. And they seem to have quite a powerful influence on your love experience through life. So really, those 3 areas are the really key major new frontiers that we have in love. Another one that's really important, which is maybe less technical, but is the association between love and healthy love relationships and your mental and physical good health. So we now know that the health of the relationships, the close relationships you have with the people in your life is the biggest factor in being healthy. So it's even more important than not smoking, eating a good diet, not being overweight, getting enough exercise. The most important thing that you can do is spend time with other people.
So can we say that love is the most important factor in our health? In other words, do we love or do we get sick?
I think it's not necessarily full-on love. There's like a spectrum that goes from liking to loving. Obviously, those love relationships are very important. And people who don't have good loving relationships, it can be quite damaging, particularly to their mental health. But it's also that area, that little bit further away from love, where you cooperate within your community, for example, or at work. So you might not say you love these people, but you definitely like these people and you do things with them and that makes you feel good. But yes, so that's social interaction. The inner layers of your social network are really important to your health.
Mm-hmm. Your answer to the question, why do we love, diminish or cancel the mystery of love, or on the contrary, increase it?
I think it increases it, because I think the more you discover love and the more you research it, what's amazing about it is you find out more and more about it. So you realize how complex it is and how it involves every fiber of our being, but also every minute of our daily lives. So it's incredibly important. So it doesn't diminish it. It makes it more astonishing because it's so incredibly complicated. And the other thing that I find amazing about love is I've studied it for nearly 2 decades now. And I still don't know the full answer to the question, what is love? And I don't think we will ever know the full answer because we all love in a slightly different way. And that's personal to us. So I don't know how you feel when you're in love. I can look at your genes, I can look at your brain, we can talk about your experience of love, I can watch your behavior, but there's going to be a little bit of it that I will never understand because I'm not you. And I think that's also what makes it so fascinating, is that special private bit that science will actually never touch.
Mm-hmm. Is love more sophisticated now in modernity or postmodernity than it was in the past, in ancient time, in the Middle Ages, let's say, for example, or in the antiquity, or is more sophisticated our analyze about love?
Yeah, love itself hasn't changed. Love is a very ancient experience. So our experience of love and the things that feed into it haven't changed. What's changed is, yes, our scientific understanding, our psychological understanding, our personal understanding. You know, there's lots of books written about what love is and trying to explore what your love experience is. And obviously, particularly with romantic love, the way you might find love has obviously changed because we now have this very technological digital world where you can find love, and maybe how you maintain your relationships by using social media has changed. But none of those things have actually affected what love is, what it feels like, because that is an incredibly evolutionarily ancient phenomenon.
Mm-hmm. Dopamine, oxytocin, beta, endorphin, all three play an important role in the complex equation of love, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's absolutely right. I would also add serotonin to that one. Serotonin is another one that's important. Yes. Although the research into serotonin is not as advanced as the other one. So we're still struggling a little bit with what serotonin does, but it's definitely there and it definitely does something.
Mm-hmm. But dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, beta endorphin don't reduce love to chemistry, do they?
No, because love isn't just experienced as a chemical rush. What those chemicals do is they give you a feeling. They activate certain areas of your brain, both in the unconscious and in the conscious brain. But love is about your thoughts. It's about your individual way of attaching to people. It's about your culture and your history and your politics. So what does your society tell you love is? Because societies differ in the answer to the question, what is love? So some societies see love as this very passionate, roller coaster experience of emotion, and it's all about other cultures see it as more a form of sacrifice. Other cultures see it as quite a painful experience. So actually there's this major cultural element to your experience of love. And I always say that love, we have to look at love on two different dimensions: the biological, which is the chemicals in the brain and the genetics and the psychology and all that. And then the social cultural. So what have you learned about love? What does your religion say about love? What do the rules of your culture say about acceptable forms of love or unacceptable forms of love? So it's a very complex interaction between the biology and the environment in which you live. And therefore, we can never reduce love to one thing, like a set of chemicals or a psychological mindset or a particular activation in the brain, because it's much more complicated than that.
Mm-hmm. Can we associate the love with Pandora's book?
Yeah, a little bit. When you first start looking at love, you think, okay, I think I reasonably understand, I've been in love personally, and I know there's these sets of studies and we look at love, but the more you look into it, the more complicated it becomes. So for example, when we look at the genetics of love, we find these genes which underpin experiences of love. Okay. But then we find they have a really complex interaction with each other, and they have a really complex interaction with the environment. So the more you undo the box or the book, the more complicated it actually becomes, which in one sense is great because it's really fascinating that it's also so sort of mixed up together. But yes, once you've opened the lid, suddenly everything comes out, and it is a very complicated picture.
Mm-hmm. So does love only have a bright side, or in order to deeply understand what love is, we must also pay attention to the dark side of love, the love?
Absolutely. And I think that's where maybe other people who've written books about love, maybe their books differ to mine, in the fact that I think it's really important that we look at love in all its different ways. And mostly love is a really positive experience. But the trouble with love, we need love so much in our lives. We need it to survive. We need it for our health. We need it to feel happy on a daily basis. That means that can be exploited. And that actually some people can use love in a negative way to manipulate you, to coerce you, to abuse you. And that's the darker side of love. And unfortunately, the fact that we have love in our lives means that we have opened ourselves up to that manipulation and that abuse. So there is a whole chapter in the book which is about the darker side of love and about how it can be used in a very negative way, which actually impacts your survival chances. So whilst it's evolved to help you survive in a small number of cases, the fact that you need love and unfortunately you're in an unhealthy relationship, that will threaten your survival. Essentially. And what makes us different from the animals, because animals experience love in different ways, is that we are the only species that uses love in that negative way. We are the only species that will manipulate somebody using love. No other species does that.
What kind of science is the science of love, if it is a science at all?
It is a science, but it's a very complicated science. I'm an anthropologist, and obviously my job as an anthropologist is to study humans. And there are sort of two ends to anthropology. There's the very scientific end, which is where I sit, and then there's the more cultural end. But I believe that you can't study anything about humans without bringing the cultural bit in, because we are a cultural species. So whilst, yes, the science of love, or the brain scanning and the genetics, that's very, very heavy science. But I don't think you can interpret the results of that without bringing in that cultural element of, so if you think about love, the way we express love in art and the fact we use art to try and understand what love is, things like that, you have to bring that into it as well. So I think that's maybe what differs. I'm different from other love scientists, I think, because I'm an anthropologist, and therefore I understand that we have to look at the cultural side of love as well to get that full picture of what human love's about.
From a, let's say, poetical perspective, is love a flame that must be extinguished? I
don't think so. No. What I think that initial flame, that initial passion and obsession is really important, because I think if we didn't have that, maybe we wouldn't make the effort to be in love. I think you have to have that slight blindness and that slight, that you will ignore everything else and you will ignore all other distractions and that you will be with this person is really important. Now, obviously, we know what underpins that. Actually, what underpins that is dopamine and oxytocin. They are and serotonin, actually. Serotonin underpins obsessive love, and oxytocin and dopamine are the ones that make you feel passionate and that make you feel really like you have to be with this person, that you're really, they take over your whole life. And it's really critical, because I think otherwise we maybe, because love's complicated and love can hurt. And I think maybe if we didn't have that little push, that passion, that obsession, we might not do it. And then obviously that's not good for the species.
Is there rational love and irrational love? Does such a distinction work actually?
Love is both, because it involves your unconscious brain, which is your irrational emotional brain, and your conscious brain, which is the rational bit, which will tell you that maybe this is the wrong person for you, or you need to take it a bit slower. So love for humans is both of those things. It's not just something that's driven by a neurochemical emotional drive. We also have this rational bit that might step in and go, oh, actually, even though you feel really passionate about this person and you're obsessed by this person, maybe they're not actually the right person for you. So love tends to be more irrational at the beginning. And that's because when you fall in love, a bit of your brain in your rational brain actually stops working. And so when we say love is blind, which is a saying, I don't know whether you have that in Romania, but we have it here in the UK. It means that, yes, in a way, your rational brain stops working a little bit and you can't quite see maybe the reality of the person. So maybe your friends and family can look at this new person and think, I don't think they're very nice, or they're not being very good. You cannot see it. you just can't, because that bit of your brain isn't working for the first few weeks, maybe first few months of being in love. So the first bit of love is quite irrational. And then you become more rational over time.
Does religion, philosophy, literature help us today to explain love? Actually, the hidden question is this one. Or maybe religion, philosophy, literature lost ground in the face of the new sciences?
I think maybe they have a little bit. I think people come to scientists and they come to the talks I give and they read my books because they want a definite answer. And they think science can give you a definite answer of, what is love? Why do I feel like this when I fall in love? Why do I do this when I'm in love? And to a certain extent, science can do that. But because love is so complicated and because there's that bit of you and your love that I won't ever understand, that is where philosophy and religion and literature have their role, because we still need to express that love. And it's still really hard, I think, to explain what love feels like. And that is where philosophy and literature and art come in, because they can try and express that emotion, because I can tell you that love is underpinned by dopamine and oxytocin, etc., etc. But that doesn't tell you what it feels like. And I think that's where art comes in, because we try and express in art those feelings. So if you listen to love songs or you read love poetry, that's what the authors are trying to do. They're trying to explain to you what love really feels like. So I think sometimes maybe science, because it's seen as new and shiny and definite, maybe sometimes gets more attention these days. But there is definitely still a role for art, because it's only art, I think, that can truly try and put down those feelings for somebody else to understand.
Mm-hmm. Two more questions. How do you see, first question, how do you see the future of love? And my question has in mind the impact of AI, artificial intelligence. The avalanche of technologies is unprecedented that we are already facing, and also the fact that genetics is advancing very quickly. So how do you see the future of love?
I think in terms of AI, we're at that point where we have to really think about how far we would want AI in our close personal relationships, because there is certainly research going on where the idea is to build companion robots, for example, or domestic social robots. Now, domestic social robots might be great. It would be nice to have somebody, in your house who did wash the clothes and emptied the dishwasher and did all these, cleaned your windows and did all those sorts of things. And that certainly is something that I think is a benefit. The line comes when we try and build something that takes away the relationships we have with other humans. So if we think about, let's say, elderly people who may be living on their own, and at the moment, maybe a member of the family goes in to see them or a carer goes in to see them. And that human interaction is really, really important. It stops loneliness. It protects their mental health. It underpins their survival. There have been some suggestions, particularly in countries where maybe there isn't a lot of money to care for the elderly, that is replaced by a humanoid robot who would go in and do the caring role, give the tablets, cook the dinner. But that's not what caring is. Caring is a very human behavior, and it involves lots of different human abilities, and it involves that meeting of two human minds. And the worry is that if you replace that with humanoid robots doing that, then that will be to the detriment of the elderly or the people who are being cared for. So we have to be very careful about the line we draw to say, right, this is acceptable involvement and this is unacceptable involvement. And we should not replace human interaction, human care with robotic care, because I work with a group up in Edinburgh who are looking at these. And one of the things that they just cannot get humans to build the sorts of relationships with these robots that you have with another human. The human brain is very, 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 very complicated and very ancient. And I can't see any possibility that you could build one that's good enough that a human-to-human interaction could occur. So that's AI. Genetics is interesting. We're still at the stage of genetics where there's still a lot to uncover. How that could be used in the future, certainly it can be used with people who might struggle with relationships and therefore their health is damaged. And certainly people who have, for example, social anxiety disorder, things like that. Some people always come to me and say, will we ever be able to like put people's genetic data into dating profiles, for example, and you could maybe find a date using your genes? I think that's very unlikely. That's very unlikely, but we maybe be able to use the information we have to help people understand a little bit more about their experience of love, how they experience of love, and if they do things that aren't very helpful in relationships, which means they find it hard to find relationships, maybe we could use the information for that.
Mm-hmm. And the last one, will love remain a major challenge to ethics? Love is a problem for ethics? Maybe it's a rhetorical question.
I think love, certainly ethicists struggle with love, and I've kind of gone into love ethics and things with like AI and love. Yeah, I think it will, because it's how much we tinker with love and how much we leave it to do its natural thing. Because love sits at the essence of humanity. And I think you have to be very careful about how much you interfere with it, really. Because I think we don't know the consequences of interfering with it. So, yeah, I think it will always remain something that we worry about.
De ce iubim? Publishing house, Romanian version, Why We Love. This is an amazing book, Why We Love. Thank you very much, Anna Machin, for this amazing conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.